The Wisconsin Paper Council is the premier trade association which advocates for Wisconsin's paper, pulp, and forestry industries before state and federal elected officials and regulators. The WPC also works to educate the general public and the media about the importance of pulp, paper, and forestry production in Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest. Welcome to the ninth episode of the Wisconsin Paper Council's podcast, The Paper Files, where we explore the pulp and paper industry here in Wisconsin. I'm Michaela Chafin, Communications and Development Analyst here at WPC, and joining me today is Carol Couillard, Executive Director of the Atlas Science Center in Appleton, Wisconsin. Thank you for joining me today. And to get us started, can you tell me more about who the Atlas Science Center serves and what the center offers?
Definitely. So a little background, the Atlas Science Center up until 2 years ago was known as the Paper Discovery Center, which opened in 2005. The Paper Discovery Center was the educational arm of the Paper Industry International Hall of Fame. And the Hall of Fame every year inducts people from the paper and pulp industry. That started in 1995, so we've had induction ceremonies. We've had a little hiccup because of COVID, but regular induction ceremonies, some of the biggest names in the paper industry are in the Hall of Fame.
And so did the center start off with the Hall of Fame and then grew into education? Or?
Exactly, it did. It started with the Hall of Fame, and the founders really wanted to tell more of a story about why these people were being inducted, what role that the paper industry, especially in Northeast Wisconsin, played in everyday lives, talk about the science of, how we make all of these items from writing paper and paper for books to toilet paper and paper towels, like how all of that really impacts lives around the world. And so they came up with the idea of starting the Paper Discovery Center, so a museum, dedicated to the original mission was all things paper, the wonder and the legacy. And out of that, I should say too, we're housed in the Atlas Mill, which was built in 1878. It was a Kimberly Clark mill, and it was the first one to actually use groundwood pulp in Wisconsin to make paper. So a lot of historical significance. One of the very first mills to actually be lit with an Edison system instead of using basically candles and lanterns, right? Because that's what they had before electric light. But to go back, we noticed that people were really excited about the science part of everything that we did, and so we morphed into a science center, but we kept the Atlas name, or went back to the Atlas name to give a nod to our paper history.
Right, and when WPC visited the center earlier in the summer, we definitely noticed that it was still quite a heavy paper focus, but included everything else from, biology, and there was even, I think you mentioned, some forensics classes or programs that the students could take, but still paper focused. So what is the main focuses you would say that the center does have, aside from paper?
Besides paper, we do, we talk a lot about STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And we try to look at everything through that lens. So, and paper is a good example because it's a lot of science, it's a lot of technology, it's engineering and math, it's all of those things. And so that's what we have been doing, is looking at other industries, and a lot of other industries in Wisconsin grew up because of the paper industry, right? So, if we look at healthcare, because we have a genomes exhibit, what's the science and technology about that? what is the science and technology in forensic science, right? Which you just mentioned, which is one of our SEED shows. So, how can you look at something like blood splatter, or how can you look at, some of the footprints left behind and solve a crime. So it's really just about broadening everyone's, the community's idea of science. We talk about scientific literacy quite a bit. Up until about World War II, they say that the scientific, where we were with science was understandable to most people, right? With a little explanation. And now everything is so different and so high tech that you have to study for years and you're not even an expert in one small field. So we're just trying to really enhance science. We know that that's important to a lot of employers because they need people who have a STEM background. And it's important also, like I said, just to really understand your place in the world.
Right, and you mentioned employers, and there are career preparedness programs, correct, for students as young as middle schoolers. What are the benefits of preparing students so young for these employers and careers in Wisconsin?
Right, so we approach that from a couple different angles. So our main audience for our programs, not for the people who just come to the center to visit. For our programs, we do upper elementary, middle school, and a little bit of high school. So we kind of split that up, the ages, with our Building for Kids, our children's museum that does a lot of STEM for younger students. So when you look at upper elementary and middle school, it's not as much career preparedness as career exploration. So what we really want them not to do at that age is say, well, I can't do that, right? We want to expose them to many different things, many different job opportunities. So when you look at, say, the paper industry, right, it's not just manufacturing, it's marketing, it's HR. Someone has to hire these people. It's logistics, it's accounting, it's so many engineers are needed, right, in these different industries. So what we want to do is make these students aware of them and make them understand, instead of saying, well, I could never be an engineer, I don't like math. We try to give them activities that show them that they can do it, right? That whole hands-on learning by doing a hands-on activity, and that increases their awareness, and it also increases their self-confidence, so they're very open to exploring different career pathways. Now when they get a little bit older, like in upper middle school, high school, then the programs that we do, and we're very fortunate to have some very highly trained educators who can lead them in doing, chemistry experiments, or we'll bring someone in from the community to help with an engineering project. One thing we have right now that we're trying to get going is we were gifted a paper machine that was used at a trade show. So it's about the size of like a long conference table, right? But it would really make tissue. So we're trying to get that up and running. So that would be something obviously more appropriate for older students. And then, the nice thing about that is then you can roll that into showing, the young kids, hey, this is something that you would do if you, worked in engineering and you worked for a company that either built paper machines or, helped maintain the paper machines. These are the careers. Look how cool this is.
Yeah, and so one thing that I'm interested in hearing about, because the paper industry for a long time has been male dominated, and that's an initiative that a lot of employers nowadays, they're wanting to bring more women and more diversity into the industry. Would you say that you get equal participation and interest from boys and girls who attend your programs, and how do you foster that interest in STEM from girls and young women?
Yeah, we do it in different ways. We do have our Women's Leaders program, which is just for teen girls. We know it, there's a lot of studies, but it's also backed up by the community, the girls that we talk to, that when they hit that middle school age, a lot of them kind of say, well, STEM is not for me. I'm not smart enough. I don't like math. I don't know anyone who is a female who does this. What if I want to have children? How would I manage that type of job? So we do have our Women Leaders program where we bring in women from who work in STEM fields all over Northeast Wisconsin, and they spend a couple hours with the girls. They do something with them, right? And so they could say, look, you're already doing it. And then at the end, they really just sit down and they talk, and the girls are able to ask questions like, where did you go to school? We always hear, were you the only girl in your class? What was that like being in a male dominated field? And so the mentors that we bring in are great, and they're all very receptive, and they want to see more women in STEM. And so they're very giving of their time and their knowledge. And what the data that we gather back from these girls is it really does make a difference in how they view STEM going forward. But, with the success of that, then we do also have parents who've written in and school districts that have said, what about boys? So we do, we're working on doing some programs, maybe not specific for boys, but we know it's also important for boys maybe to go to a program led by someone, a female in STEM, right? And it's not just boys, it's underserved households as well, right? So that whole looking like me, if you're a person of color and you want to, not be the only person of color that it works for an organization, right? So we try to make sure that our classes are advertised for everyone. We try to remove financial barriers for everyone. And I would say right now we probably do get a pretty good mix of boys and girls attending our programs.
No, that's really great. I mean, I remember when I was younger and around that middle school age, that's when people started picking what they wanted to do and what they liked. And I remember thinking, I'm bad at math, so I'm not going to do anything sciencey. And, then I became an English major. So it definitely does have an effect around that age.
Yes.
And you mentioned parents. What do you recommend for parents who may be worried about their child going into manufacturing, because there are stigmas against manufacturing and thinking that they're bad jobs when in reality they're not? What resources would you give those parents or advice who may be concerned or maybe just have questions about these career paths?
I have to say, as a mother of 2 boys in high school, that this is really a great time to have students who are going to be entering the workforce, because of the worker shortage. There is just so many opportunities that didn't exist when I was going through school. My husband and I talk about this all the time, that we are lucky. But to go back to your question a little bit, the Northeast Wisconsin Manufacturing Alliance, or NUMA, we sat down and talked to Anne, who's the executive director, and really myself and our educators really started looking into jobs and industry in manufacturing. And, that was the concern that we've heard a lot is, we have these state-of-the-art facilities that are making amazing things, and people think they're going to be working in a place that's unsafe or loud or dirty, and it's the exact opposite. And so much advice I would give to the parents is that if, first of all the schools are doing a really good job. Some have more resources than others, but they do have, academic career planning is mandated by the state of Wisconsin. So they're all doing something. It's sometimes hard to get the kids to bring that information home, right? So that is a good place to start. Look at different different websites for different companies, and you'll see, what they're hiring. A lot of them are having job fairs. The Manufacturing Alliance that I'm talking about, they have many, many job fair and programs. The technical schools are doing just an amazing job of bringing students in when they're younger and showing them the great facilities that they have to work on it, and so you can get the information really of, again, what you're going to be doing, and so when you hit the field, you're ready to go. But there are a lot of other companies too, and this way I really do think it's worth it for parents to sit down with their students and start going through different websites, because there are many that will pay for you to go to school. Like, you started an entry-level job, but you're interested in something else. They'll help you figure out what that wants to be. If you want to be an engineer or go into marketing or accounting, right? They will help you pay for your schooling. And that is something, we hear so much about students drowning in debt, right? And I really think that it's a great, with a little bit of effort, it is very, you can really help your kid get off to a really good future with their career. And the program that we are going to start is called WIN, which stands for Wisconsin Industry Initiatives. And we will be debuting that in 2024. And it's going to be about this. It's going to be inviting different industries to come in and say, hey, we make this really cool product. This is what it is, or this is the machine that builds it. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop of here are some really amazing organizations. We don't want all of our workforce to go live in another state, right? We want to keep all our wonderful, bright students here in Wisconsin. But the exhibit is going to be just pretty much, made in Wisconsin, right? Like, what do you make? And then, so yeah, I would like to make this, I would love to be involved in the paper industry. So, or I would love to do design packaging. I personally think packaging is like a really, really cool field. But, let's look at it. Let's have some packaging. Let's test it to see, how it works. And then along with those, we're going to have just some little examples of things, because we've heard from some employers that, along the way, a lot of students are losing the ability to use, say, a tape measure or a level, right? So we'll have some different little hands-on things to do as well. But then information and videos, interviews of people who say, I'm a process engineer and I work for this company and this is what I do. And so really, since the majority of our guests come in with their parents, unless they're on a field trip, it'll be a really good, the goal is to really increase awareness of different jobs. And we will have a virtual reality component, which is very cool. And it does have some different things that relate to paper industries. A lot of it, there's some that talks about renewable energy. I personally did the one where I was fixing a cell tower, which I was not good at, because I really did feel like I was going to fall, because it's that realistic. But we're really excited for that exhibit to start next year.
That sounds like a lot of fun, especially, not only are the newer generations more interested in technology and getting their hands on things, but, that's the way that modern jobs are moving toward as well, as more technology. So that's a really cool tie-in. I would definitely love to do virtual reality of different jobs. So that sounds exciting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and some of them too, we kind of expand on industry because we know that healthcare is a big industry. So one of them that one of our educators did was she assisted in a knee surgery, and there was, some blood splatter, which, I mean, if you're trying to, bring in some middle school students, that's kind of cool. So
yeah, that's the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that and the outhouse that we have in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
talking about toilet paper. Those are those are the big draws.
Yeah, and you mentioned that program. I think another program that you had mentioned in an email that you sent was Tools and Tech that's starting this fall, correct?
Right. Tools and Tech is either going to start this fall or it's going to start in the spring with WIN, because we are really what we wanted to do when we started Women's Leaders, and that worked out very well for us. And so we said, okay, what's next? We've got this great program for girls. What do we want to do next? And so the next thing as a science and technology center is to talk about technology. And so we've been working with some different organizations to do things. Coding is obviously something that a lot of people are looking at, although now, I was just reading that AI might be taking over coding. So that's, and that's interesting. As a science center, like, let's bring that up. Let's talk about it. But we're starting to incorporate that into WIN a little bit. So Tools and Tech is probably going to be in spring. And then WIN will be the other thing that we said was, we don't want our career focus just to skew to students who are pursuing like a 4-year degree, right? We know that some people want to just start working as soon as high school is over. And so that's where the idea of WIN came about. And like I said, the neat thing is, part of WIN will be helping students look at, here's a right after high school, here's a 2-year, here's a 4-year, right? Here are all the different things that you can do.
And it's interesting you mentioned the AI, and I know that's a big thing, especially right now with not only technology, but also like in writing and social media.
Right.
So that kind of ties into my next question. What are some ways that the center plans to keep up with changes in not only STEM education, but, modern technology, and also just educating newer generations of students?
Right. And then, a full disclosure, there are even AI classes for nonprofits, right? Like how to use AI, to construct messages. And we've played around with that. And we, it's kind of fun. It's kind of weird.
It is.
And we are using some of that information about, when they talk about the Industrial Revolution, and there's 4 industrial revolutions, right? And so now we're in the one where machines are talking to each other, because they really are, right? Which sounded like science fiction when I was a child, but now is actually happening. But to go back to your question, keeping current with the technology part and the science part is something that we think about and talk about a lot. And the best way really is to be engaged as much as we can with our community, right? So we go to, we're always having meetings with the different school districts and the Manufacturing Alliance, and see where this technology is really playing out. And as we started to plan our new exhibits, that was something that we were very worried about, is how do you bring an exhibit into a space and not have it obsolete 2 years after it's there. And so when we were reimagining this space, we said, okay, we have our stage shows, and those, that is something that is relatively easy for our educators to come up with, right? Because you can add things in as you're talking to your audience, right? Or the audience participates, right? They'll bring up new information. And that's why we will have some exhibits, typical science center exhibits, but as we remodel, we are going to keep things like the stage and the paper lab, and a chemistry lab, and spaces for rotating exhibits, because we know we don't want to get stale, right? There was something in our genome exhibit the other day, which we just put up like this year, and then something new came out, and we're like, wow, that's cool. This is in the news. And so it's really gratifying to know that we've kind of hit on something that is in the news. But yeah, it is also a hard thing to do when everything is changing so fast.
And do you have any other resources or any other advice for people who want to visit the center, and where can they learn more about the center?
Our website, atlassciencecenter.org, is the best place. I would say we try to direct everyone to there, especially from our social media sites as well, just because it encompasses everything. But we, follow us on Facebook. We're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Right now, we also have a YouTube channel, and we are trying to do a lot of things like this podcast. Been on some other TV and radio stations as well, talking about Atlas. But we really try to update a lot of that, or we do update that on our website.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for joining me today. And if you're in the Appleton area or surrounding areas, consider going to the Atlas Science Center. I'm 24 years old and I enjoyed visiting there. So it is a fun educational experience. And is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I would say the best way to learn about us really is to come in and come for a visit. Talk to our educators. We, we love to talk really about any subject, and we really are looking for feedback about what people think our science center should be. When we've had our stakeholder meetings, the thing that came out the most was that don't make a science center that you could see in Denver or Miami. Make sure that it is something, because Northeast Wisconsin and most of Wisconsin really has a huge history of industry and science and innovation that people don't really know about. So please make sure that you are that is the message that we're getting. So invite everyone to come and visit and see for yourself.
Thank you. And I'll put a link in the description to their website for anyone who's interested. And thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. For more information on the paper industry or the Wisconsin Paper Council, please visit www.wipaper.org. WPC members have access to special events, newsletters, committees, and more.